All right, pull up a chair, or a bucket, or just sit on the ground like I do. I don't care. It's April, the dirt's warming up, and I've got that feeling again. That feeling I get every single spring, same as I have for the last 30-some years. It's like Christmas morning, except instead of presents under a tree, it's seeds in my pocket and a whole season of possibilities stretched out in front of me. April is the month where everything starts, where the planning turns into doing, where you stop staring at seed catalogs and start getting your hands dirty. And today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what I'm putting in the ground this month, when I'm doing it, and most importantly, why. Because the why is what most people skip, and the why is what makes the difference between a garden that feeds you and a garden that frustrates you. First thing I want to say is this: what I plant in April might not be what you should plant in April. I'm in Zone 6B, that matters. If you're down in Texas or up in Minnesota, your April looks different from mine. Your last frost date is different, your soil temperature is different, everything is different. So don't just copy what I do and expect the same results. Use what I'm telling you as a framework, as a way of thinking about it, and then adjust for where you are. That's what a good farmer does. He doesn't follow a recipe blindly. He reads the land, reads the weather, reads the soil, and makes decisions based on what's actually happening in front of him, not what some guy on the internet told him to do, even if that guy is me. Now, let me tell you what my April looks like, step by step, week by week. First week of April. The soil is still cold. I checked it this morning with my thermometer, and it was about 48 degrees Fahrenheit at 4 inches deep. That's too cold for most warm season crops. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, all of those will just sit there and sulk in 48-degree soil. They won't grow. They might even rot, so I don't even think about those yet. What I'm putting in right now, first week, is the cold hardy stuff, the tough guys, the vegetables that actually like cool weather and can handle a light frost without complaining. Peas go in first, always, every year. I've been planting peas in the first week of April for as long as I can remember, and they never let me down. Sugar snap peas, specifically. I dig a shallow trench about 1 inch deep along my trellis, drop the seeds in about 2 inches apart, cover them up, water them in, and walk away. Peas are the easiest thing you will ever grow. They germinate in cold soil. They fix their own nitrogen, which means they actually improve your soil while they grow. They climb a simple trellis made of string or chicken wire. And in about 60 days, you'll be standing in your garden eating them straight off the vine, warm from the sun, so sweet and crisp that you'll wonder why you ever bought them from a store. There is no comparison. Store-bought peas are sad little things. Homegrown peas are a revelation. Right alongside the peas, I'm putting in lettuce. Multiple varieties. I do a mix of romaine, butterhead, and a loose leaf blend. Lettuce loves cool weather. It actually gets bitter and bolts when it gets hot, so April is the sweet spot, the perfect time. I direct sow it in shallow rows, barely cover the seeds because lettuce needs light to germinate, and I keep the soil moist. In about 3 weeks, I'll have baby greens ready to cut, and they'll keep producing for weeks after that if I do cut and come again harvesting. That means I don't pull the whole plant. I just cut the outer leaves and let the center keep growing. One planting gives me salad for a month and a half. Spinach goes in the same week. Spinach is another cold weather champion. It can handle frost. It can handle a light freeze. It actually tastes better when it's been through some cold weather because the plant converts starch to sugar to protect itself, which makes the leaves sweeter. I plant spinach thick, almost like I'm broadcasting grass seed in a wide bed. It's up in about a week if the soil's moist. And just like lettuce, I harvest the outer leaves and let it keep going. By the time it gets hot enough for spinach to bolt, I've already gotten dozens of harvests from it. Radishes. I plant radishes in April because they're the fastest vegetable I know. 25 days from seed to table. 25 days. You put a seed in the ground, and less than a month later, you pull out a perfect little red radish. For anyone who's new to this, for anyone who's never grown anything before, I always say, start with radishes. Because the quick payoff, keeps you motivated. It shows you that this actually works, that the ground actually gives back what you put into it. I scatter radish seeds in any gaps between my other crops. They grow fast enough to be harvested before the bigger plants need the space. Also, in the first week, I'm sowing carrots. Now, carrots are a different story. Carrots are slow. They take 2 to 3 weeks just to germinate, and another 70 to 80 days after that to reach full size. So when I plant them in early April, I'm not eating carrots until June or July. That's fine. That's planning ahead. That's thinking about future you. The trick with carrots is to keep the soil surface moist during those first few weeks while you're waiting for them to germinate. If the surface dries out and crusts over, those tiny carrot seedlings can't push through and they die before they ever see daylight. I lay a thin strip of burlap over my carrot rows and water through it every day. It keeps the moisture in and the crust from forming. Old trick my grandfather taught me. Still works. Onion sets go in the first week too. I buy sets, not seeds, because sets give me a head start. I push them into the soil about an inch deep, 4 inches apart, in rows. They'll start growing immediately in the cool weather, and by midsummer, I'll have full-sized onions ready to pull and cure. Onions are one of those crops that people overlook because they're cheap at the store. But a homegrown onion, fresh out of the ground, has a flavor that's completely different from what you buy in a bag. It's sharper, more complex, more alive, and they store for months if you cure them properly. I'll have onions from this planting lasting me through December. Second week of April. Soil's warming up a bit. We're getting into the low 50s now. I start putting in beets and Swiss chard. These are both from the same family, actually. They're related. Beets I plant in rows about 3 inches apart, and here's something people don't know. Each beet seed is actually a cluster of seeds. So you'll get 2 or 3 seedlings from each one, and you'll need to thin them. Don't skip the thinning. If you leave them all crowded together, you'll get tiny, miserable beets. Thin them to 3 inches apart, and you'll get beautiful baseball-sized roots. And don't throw away the beet greens. Cook them like spinach. They're delicious. 2 crops from one plant. Swiss chard is one of my favorite things to grow, and I don't think it gets enough attention. It's beautiful. Those bright red and yellow and orange stems look like something from a painting, and it's tough as nails. It handles cold, it handles heat. It just keeps going from spring all the way through fall. I'll plant it once in April and still be harvesting from the same plants in October. That's 6 months of food from one planting. You can't beat that. I sow it in a row about 6 inches apart and cut the outer leaves as they get big enough to use. This is also when I start my kale. Kale is the vegetable that everybody decided was cool about 10 years ago, and then everybody decided they were tired of. And meanwhile, I've been growing it for 3 decades because it's one of the most reliable, nutritious, productive plants you can put in the ground. It doesn't care about frost. It doesn't care about heat mostly. It grows big and leafy, and you just keep pulling leaves off it like a green factory. I grow lacinato kale, also called dinosaur kale, because the flavor is better and the texture is less tough than curly kale. Plant it now in April, and it'll be ready to harvest in about 60 days, and will keep producing until hard winter kills it. If you're in a milder climate, it might not die at all. I've seen kale survive through winter and start growing again in spring. The thing is almost indestructible. Second week is also when I start my broccoli and cabbage transplants going outside. Now, I started these indoors 6 weeks ago, back in late February. They've been growing under lights in my house, getting big and strong, and now they're ready to go into the garden. But not straight from the house to the ground. You have to harden them off first. That means putting them outside for a few hours a day, then bringing them back in, then a few more hours the next day, gradually letting them get used to wind and sun and temperature changes. If you skip this step and just plunk your indoor seedlings straight into the garden, they'll go into shock. The sun will burn their leaves. The wind will batter them. They might survive, but they'll be set back by weeks. Take the time to harden them off over 5 to 7 days. I know it's tedious. I know you want to just get them in the ground. Be patient. Patience is half of farming. 3rd week of April. Now we're getting somewhere. The soil is hitting 55 degrees consistently. This is when I start pushing the boundaries a little. I put in my potatoes. I know some people plant potatoes on St. Patrick's Day as a tradition, and that's fine if your soil is ready. But in my zone, that's usually too early. The soil is still too cold and too wet, and the seed potatoes just sit there rotting. Third week of April, the soil has drained, it's warmed up, and the potatoes hit the ground running. I cut my seed potatoes into pieces, each piece with at least 2 eyes, let the cut sides dry and callus over for a day or two, then plant them in trenches about 4 inches deep and 12 inches apart. As they grow, I hill them. That means I mound soil up around the stems every couple of weeks. The potatoes form along the buried stem, so the more you hill, the more potatoes you get. It's like the tomato trick with burying the stem deep, except with potatoes you do it gradually as they grow. I usually get 3 or 4 hillings in before the plants get too big. And the harvest, man. Digging potatoes is like digging for treasure. Every forkful of soil reveals these beautiful golden or red or purple nuggets, and it never gets old. 30 years, and I still feel like a kid on an Easter egg hunt when I'm digging potatoes. This is also the week I direct sow my snap beans in a test row. I say test row because it's still a gamble this early. Beans don't like cold soil. They want 60 degrees. But by late April, I can usually get away with it, especially if I put them in a south-facing bed that gets full sun all day. If they come up, great. I'm ahead of the game. If they don't, I've lost a handful of seeds and I'll replant in May. That's the thing about farming. You're always hedging your bets. You're always playing the odds. Some gambles pay off and some don't. And either way, you learn something. Last week of April. This is when things get exciting. By now, I'm itching to get my warm season crops going. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, the big guys, the stars of the show. But hold on. Not yet. Not in the ground yet. What I do in the last week of April is start hardening off my tomato and pepper transplants. They've been growing indoors since March, and they're big and beautiful and dying to get outside, but the nights are still too cold for them. One frost will kill a tomato plant dead. So I start the hardening off process, outside during the day when it's warm, back inside at night, a little more exposure each day. By the time May rolls around and the frost danger is past, they'll be ready to go straight into the ground without missing a beat. But there's one warm season crop I do plant in late April, and it's squash. Specifically, I direct sow summer squash, zucchini mostly, under row covers. The row cover acts like a little greenhouse, trapping warmth around the soil and the seedlings. It raises the temperature by 5 to 10 degrees, which is enough to get squash going even when the nights are still cool. I plant the seeds in hills, 3 seeds per hill, about 3 feet apart, and drape the row cover over hoops made from bent wire. The squash germinates fast in the warmth under that cover, and by the time I remove the cover in mid-May, the plants are already established and growing strong. Gives me a 2 to 3 week head start on the season. I also use late April to put in herbs. Parsley, dill, and cilantro go in now because they like cool weather. Parsley takes forever to germinate, like 2 to 3 weeks, so get it in now and be patient. Dill comes up fast and I succession plant it every 2 weeks so I always have fresh dill available. Cilantro is the same deal. It bolts quickly in heat, so getting it in the cool of late April gives me the longest harvest window before it goes to seed. Now let me talk about something that goes beyond what I'm planting, and that's how I'm preparing the soil for all of this. Because you can have the best seeds in the world and the perfect planting schedule, and if your soil isn't right, none of it matters. I've said it before, and I'll say it 1,000 more times. Soil is everything. In early April, before I plant anything, I go out to my beds and I look at them. I really look. I push my fingers into the soil and feel it. Is it dry enough to work? If it clumps into a ball and doesn't crumble when you poke it, it's too wet. Working soil when it's too wet destroys the structure, compacts it, ruins all the beautiful tilth you built up over the season. Wait until it crumbles. Then, I take a broad fork and gently loosen the top few inches. I don't till. Haven't tilled in over a decade. I just loosen. Then, I spread an inch of good compost over the surface and work it lightly into the top couple inches. That's it. That's my entire soil prep. Compost. The beds I've been treating this way for years are so soft and dark and full of worms that you can push your hand into the soil up to your wrist with no effort. That's the kind of soil that grows food. That's the kind of soil you're building toward. I also check my soil pH in April, every year. It takes 5 minutes with a cheap test kit, and it tells me if I need to adjust anything. Most vegetables want a pH between 6 and 7. If it's too acidic, I add a little lime. If it's too alkaline, I add sulfur or more compost. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference because pH affects how well your plants can absorb nutrients. You could have the richest soil in the world, but if the pH is way off, the plants can't access any of it. It's like having a pantry full of food, but the door's locked. Check your pH, unlock that door. Let me also talk about what I'm not planting in April, because that's just as important. I'm not planting tomatoes directly in the ground. Too early? I'm not planting peppers directly in the ground. Way too early. Peppers want warm soil, warm nights, warm everything. I'm not planting melons or cucumbers or sweet potatoes. All of those are May or even June crops for my zone. I know it's tempting. The garden centers are already selling tomato plants in April, and people buy them and stick them in the ground and then wonder why they just sit there not growing for 3 weeks. Because the soil is cold. Because the nights are cold. Because you jump the gun. Don't jump the gun. April is for cool season crops and for getting your warm season crops ready. May is when the real party starts. The other thing I'm doing in April that's not exactly planting but is absolutely critical is mulching. As soon as my cool season crops are up and established, I lay down mulch between the rows. Straw, mostly. Shredded leaves work too. This does 3 things. It keeps the soil moisture even, which means I water less. It suppresses weeds, which means I spend less time on my knees pulling stuff I didn't plant. And it keeps the soil temperature stable, which cool season crops love. Later in the season, when the warm season crops go in, the mulch will keep the soil from overheating. It's the single best labor-saving practice I know. 20 minutes of spreading straw saves me hours of weeding and watering over the next 4 months. I want to mention one more thing about April planting that I think is really important, and it's something I didn't learn until I'd been doing this for about 10 years. Succession planting. Most people plant lettuce once, eat it all, and then they're done. No more lettuce until next year. That's crazy. What I do is plant a small amount of lettuce every 2 weeks, from early April through mid-May. Same with radishes. Same with spinach. Same with beans later in the season. This way, I never have a mountain of lettuce that I can't eat fast enough followed by months of nothing. I have a steady, continuous supply of fresh greens from April all the way through to fall. It takes the same amount of seeds, the same amount of space, just spread out over time instead of all at once. It's such a simple concept, and it completely changed how I garden. So that's my April. That's what's going in the ground this month on my little piece of dirt. Peas, lettuce, spinach, radishes, carrots, onions, beets, chard, kale, broccoli, cabbage, potatoes, a test row of beans, squash under covers, herbs, and a whole lot of compost and mulch. It doesn't look like much right now, just rows of dark soil with tiny green specks poking through. But give it 6 weeks, and this place will be alive. Green and growing and productive and beautiful in that way that only a working garden can be beautiful. Not magazine beautiful. Dirt under your fingernails, sweat on your forehead, food on your table beautiful. The real kind. Get out there. The soil is ready. Your seeds are waiting. April won't last forever. And neither will that feeling of standing in a garden at sunrise with a cup of coffee and the whole season stretching out in front of you like a promise. That's the best feeling there is. Trust me. 30 years of doing this, and it's still the best feeling there is.